Karima Brown. It's Sunday morning and it's time for The Fix. First up, embattled Denel, yet another SOE in crisis. But its current leaders are going after the looters as they try to stem the cash flow crisis to pay salaries. We get the very latest. And then we have a panel of diverse economists looking at South Africa's job crisis and if there is a way out of growing unemployment. And as is custom, we take a look at what's made headlines this weekend and why. The Fix starts now. Welcome to this edition of The Fix, where every Sunday we hold the decision makers to account. We tell you why it matters, how it affects you, and why you should care. Now, Denel used to be a going concern and in many cases the jewel in the state's state-owned enterprise's crown, doing a roaring trade and leading in innovation. But after state capture, the munitions company is in dire straits and cannot even afford to pay salaries. Today we are joined by Talib Sadik. He is Denel Board Member and he's also the chairman of the Audit Committee, following news that Denel is going to go after previous bosses who have mismanaged the parastatal. Thank you very good morning to you this Sunday for joining us here on The Fix. You released a statement on Wednesday where you explained that you're going to take civil action against some of former Denel executives. You are going to be laying complaints to the SAPS and you will be launching a High Court application review around the contracts, particularly as far as it involves a VR laser, which is, of course, related to former President Jacob Zuma's son. Let's start there. What is the intention of the court action? Is it to get that deal null and void?
Good morning, Karima, and thank you for having us on air. It's a great opportunity for Denel to be here and to share with you and the viewers what we've been up to. We as the board have been in place since April, about over a year ago, and the issues that you're raising relates to the VR Laser Group and also the establishment of Denel Asia. Based on the investigations that the board initiated and led, what we have found is that both those contracts were unlawful. And our view is that we need to hold the people accountable. Most of the people that we'd be looking at are former employees and former board members of the Denel board and also other implicated persons outside of the Denel group.
Okay, so let's start with former employees and board members. Mr. Daniel Mancha, who is currently part of Mr. Jacob Zuma's legal team, was in fact the board chair of Denel, very central to this. In fact, threatened to take the Treasury to court if this deal didn't go through. Is he one of the implicated persons?
You know, we are looking at the former board members. We've looked at over 2.5 million records, and we've looked at computer imaging, etc. Mr. Mancha did play a leadership role at the board. He was the former chairman, and no doubt he would be asked to provide statements and evidence around his involvement.
Let's talk about Salim Essa. He was also quite key to this deal in terms of the Gupta kind of war council, if you like. He was a key man moving from one state-owned enterprise to the next. Is he on your list of targets?
Yeah, let's just talk a bit about Salim Essa because his involvement was in the VR Laser Group South Africa. He was also the 100% shareholder of a company called VR Laser Asia, which was registered in Hong Kong. They in turn had a 49% stake in Denel Asia, with Denel having 51%. And what we have found is that while Salim Essa was the shareholder of Denel Asia, he was not on the board of Denel Asia. There we had the former, I'm not too sure whether it's the former, but it's the lawyer of the Gupta family, Mr. Van der Merwe,
yes,
and another individual called Mr. Singhala, representing VR Laser Asia's interest in Denel Asia. And from the Denel side, we had the former group CEO of Denel and the former CEO of our landward capability.
Okay, can you give me their names, please?
Yeah, the former group CEO, his name is Zwelakhe Nchepe, and the former CEO of Denel Land Systems, his name is Stefan Berger. So this entity, Denel Asia, was registered in Hong Kong, and it was done prior to obtaining the full ministerial approval that was required. There was also a sharing of proprietary information with the 49% shareholder, which was unauthorized. And as a result of that, we believe we have actually taken a decision to pursue criminal action against those individuals.
Now, one of the things that is obviously on record is that whilst Treasury didn't sign off on this deal, the current Minister of Public Enterprises at the time, Ms. Lynn Brown, did publicly acknowledge that she is okay with this deal. Is she one of the implicated persons? Are you going to call her either as a witness, or are you going to put her with the group of people that you're going to charge for a deal that is essentially, in your view, illegal?
Yeah, based on the evidence that we've gathered, what we've also seen is that there was an interception of interministerial correspondence.
Yes.
At the time, Minister Gordon was the finance minister and Minister Brown, public enterprises. So we found evidence of those correspondence being intercepted. We will be reporting it to the South African police.
What is the violation there? Is that the violation of the Secrecy Act because cabinet information is confidential and secret?
Well, a couple of things. One is we went ahead and we registered a company without the full ministerial approval as required in legislation. The sharing of proprietary information, engaging with clients, marketing Denel Asia to clients specifically in the Indian market, where we were blacklisted, and that's now been lifted. And those were lucrative opportunities, and sharing of confidential information.
So Lynn Brown, the former Public Enterprises Minister, member of the African National Congress, is one of the implicated persons.
You know, we've done the exercise, we've identified implicated people, and we will forward that. At this stage, I think it would be, we know who the individuals are, but I don't think it would be fair to share that publicly at this stage.
Just give us a timeline. When are you going to court on this matter?
Well, it's under Denel Asia, it's criminal action we are pursuing. So we are reporting it to the police. We expect to do that within the next 2 weeks. And once we report it to them, they will then go ahead with their investigation.
Okay, now one of the big issues at Denel is that you are reportedly not able to pay salaries. You've got a cash flow problem. We know that you used to do a roaring trade. Many ministers referred to this institution as a successful SOE. Now we know how you got here. I mean, you were essentially eked out by the state capture project, but you've had some time to turn the place around. How come you don't have money to pay your employees?
Okay, there's a couple of things in the statement you are making. I think the seeds for Denel's downfall was laid around 2013, 2014. State capture recently definitely contributed towards Denel's demise. But prior to that, I think the issues we've had was around the halting of the strategic equity partnerships. It was a strategy that the former Minister of Public Enterprises, Alec Irwin, put in place over 10 years ago. And that's what caused Denel to be a flagship state-owned company, where we concluded these strategic equity partnerships with international players. The other area was around mismanagement, where we changed the operating model. We moved away from a decentralized business group, because it's quite a complex structure. We have about over 10 standalone business entities. So we moved away from a decentralized to a centralized environment, and program execution has been really bad. And then during that time, we made a very poor acquisition in a vehicle manufacturing business for over 800 million rand. It's a company that Denel bought from a group of a BE group together with an international OEM BAE, and we spent over 800 million rand with money.
Who made that decision?
It was made, I would suppose, by the board at the time and by management. and that was shared with the broader shareholder community.
So where are you going to get the money from to pay salaries? You're talking here about a civil action against some of the former Denel executives to recover monies lost through what you call irregular awarding of pilot bursaries. That must include former Northwest Premier Supra Mahumapelo. And then you're also talking about the fact that you are going to be giving the SAPS forensic information. But let's talk about the money. How are you going to get the money back?
The money back, as we did state capture did contribute towards the downfall of Denel. So in terms of the monies back, we will pursue civil action against the implicated employees. So if we look at the bursary issue, there we've identified, it's a quite material, but it's also not material. In total, we're looking at recovering of about 2.6 million rand
just on the bursary program. Who else has been implicated? I mean, we know about Mr. Mahumapelo, but whose children, high-profile children, got bursaries?
They were not high-profile. In this particular instance, it was a pilot bursary program that was quite irregular. It was outside of our norm. It was bursaries provided to an institution that wasn't a recognized training institution from a Denel perspective.
So they were actually going to train pilots that you weren't going to recognize their qualification?
No, we would have recognized the qualification, but there wasn't a need. Our bursary program is around training people or providing bursaries to people that would come and work at Denel for a period of time. So we tend to target mainly kids with maths and science, focusing on engineering and science degrees, the STEM related. And on that bursary program, our average bursaries were about 100,000 Rand per student. With this particular instance with Mr. Mahupela, we had provided him with a bursary of about 1.2 million Rand without following any process.
Have you recovered that money?
That was very irregular. We have summons issued. We've now served them to the former employees because we do not believe it was a criminal act. It was an irregular outside of the Denel policies.
Yeah.
So we've served those summons and we're now going through that process.
So apart from the bursary scheme monies that you're trying to recover, what other monies are out there that Denel can lay its hands on? I spoke with the asset forfeiture unit head, Willie Hofmeyer, last week, and he was saying to me, it's quite a lengthy process and it's not as easy as, people think to just kind of get the money back. So take us through some of the processes that you've initiated.
So we were very pleased to see that the SRU, the Special Investigating Unit, has now have a proclamation issued that includes Denel. So that would speed up our recovery process and also speed up the process of holding people that should be criminally charged, charge them and let them be accountable for their actions. So that proclamation was approved in the middle of July. On the VR Laser Group, Denel has spent over 370 million Rand on contracts with the VR Laser Group. And those contracts were based on supplier agreements that were signed in 2014 and 2015. Based on our evidence, we believe they were unlawful. So we will be going through a process to quantify the damage and the loss that Denel suffered, and then we'll make a claim. Around Denel Asia, I think it's also, it'll be very difficult for me to make some points around it because we are going through a legal process. So as we make further progress, we will keep you updated.
Mr. Willie Hofmeyer said to me that the Gupta family was actually quite adroit at moving monies around. They were very good at money laundering, and they made sure that it was difficult to trace the money. What challenges are you facing in getting to these individuals, or are your forensic information that you've gathered, you're talking about mirroring images of computers and so on, so it's live forensic information. Do you believe that it's going to, be fairly straightforward for the authorities to actually lay claims to these monies, considering how smart the Guptas actually were?
Well, not only the Guptas, but whoever has been implicated, including the Guptas, of course. In terms of getting back the monies, it's also holding people accountable. So we may, in some areas, depending on how we quantify the loss or not, or whatever, but we need to hold people accountable, and if there are criminal charges, then they would need to be faced with that. I think it's really for us to make sure we do a thorough job. And one of the frustrations of the organised labour has been how long it's taken us to get to this position. And that's because how difficult it has been to get the evidence.
Yes.
And to go over 2.5 million records. And we're all aware of the KPMG SARS saga. And, you know, with the board, our board is made up of highly reputable people, and we wanted to ensure whatever reports we do get, you know, it's proper, it's complete, and it's thorough. And so once the investigators have done their work, they've identified people we should be holding accountable, we then passed it on to an independent firm of lawyers to review it, to review the content of the
Which firm of lawyers
information.
did you pass it on to?
On our panel.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, let's get back to the salary question and the fact that your employees are unhappy. Are you going to be paying salaries? Where is that money coming from?
Okay, the employees there were unhappy. Obviously, with the salary payments, we managed to sort that out before the end of the month. We normally pay employees around the 26th. We were not able to pay them the full amounts, but by the end of the month, we were able to do that. That was for the month of June and July. In August, you know, we are having discussions with our banks, and they're very positive. With all the changes and all the initiatives that the new board has launched, and the results of it, we've now got the banks back on the table, back to talking to Denel, which is very pleasing. Not only the banks, but also the asset managers who hold our long-term notes. So there we are making steady progress. The Solidarity Union had raised the issues around funds to the retirement fund and to medical aid. We are now up to date with those, and we believe we will continue to be up to date.
Just as a parting question for you, are you able to be in a position to guarantee that salaries will be paid on time, in full, in August?
You know, we are now at the beginning of the month. You know, at this stage, we're fairly confident, and we will see how our trading operates.
All right, thank you so very much for joining me here in the studio. After the break, we look at the jobs crisis facing South Africa and explore possible solutions with my expert panel of economists. Don't go anywhere.